Hey, Sex Ed with DB listeners, DB here, and I need your help to make this podcast exactly what you want. We've put together a quick listener survey to find out what matters most to you, so we can cover the topics that you care about, find sponsors that match your interests, and create a podcast experience that's perfect for you. Plus, as a thank you, you could win a $100 gift card from Lion's Den. Your email is optional, so you can stay anonymous if you'd like. Just hit the link in the show notes and help us make Sex Ed with DB the best it can be for you.
But that dress, that Carolina Herrera,
oh my god,
yellow dress,
and her little tiny nips are just poking right out.
Poking all through.
Right out there.
Hey everybody, welcome to Rom-Com Bomb, a Sex Ed with DB podcast miniseries exploring popular rom-coms from the 90s and early aughts that gave us toxic messages about love and sex. Hello, sweet, sweet listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Rom-Com Bomb, our last episode of the miniseries, which is so exciting. We have two amazing guests for you today. This week, we are joined by the incredible hosts of Two Black Girls, One Rose, a podcast uncovering what we can learn about modern dating, love, and relationships from popular television. You might see some synchronicity here with Rom-Com Bomb. So hello, Natasha and Justine. Welcome.
Hey, Danielle. Excited to be here.
Oh my God, the tone.
That
Hey,
jinx.
Danielle.
I know,
That was
I can't
perfect.
even.
Thrilled that you two are here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Excited
Yeah,
to
thanks
be
for
here.
having us.
Yeah, this is your bread and butter. So I feel like
Oh, yeah.
this is what you do for a living. We're just doing this mini series. This is our first time doing it. And so I'm happy to have you two kind of be on as our resident experts who go over kind of these kinds of things. You're more of kind of, reality folks, but I do think that you go over similar kinds of topics and we use media to kind of shed some light on what the hell are we thinking here about love and dating and all of these things.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like these movies, these shows have made such an impact in us as like teenagers, and even now, like we spend so much time watching these shows. We want to make sure that we can at least walk away with some takeaways. So excited to be here today to help with that.
Absolutely. Yes. And last week's teaser was this. I'm going to read it and then hopefully, people already got the memo and know what it is, but maybe they don't. So I'm excited. A how-to columnist embarks on a wild mission to drive a man away in just 10 days for a magazine article. Enter an ad exec who's made a bet that he can make any woman fall in love with him in 10 days. The result? A hilarious battle of wits and romantic chaos as both of them unknowingly play each other, leading to laugh-out-loud moments, misunderstandings, and unexpected chemistry. We're talking about how to lose a guy in 10 days today for our last episode. And yeah, excellent film. I mean, we're going to get all into it, but in case it's been a decade or two since, listener, you have seen it, here's a quick recap of what the movie is. Kate Hudson, right? She's Andy Anderson. She's this like sexy cutie magazine writer, and she really sets out to lose a guy in 10 days, really like solely for this article, right? Like there's no kind of reasoning other than her boss is like, you can't write about politics. That's too smart for this feminist magazine, which is hilarious. And you are just going to have to lose this guy in 10 days and then you can write a piece about it. And she's like, okay, let's figure that out, right? Matthew McConaughey, sexy, cutie, hot, romantic boy who like started off in all these rom-coms, right? He plays insane name, Benjamin Barry. Whose name is that? Nobody has that name.
With Andy Anderson.
Andy Anderson.
Andy Anderson. It's very cute, but unrealistic. He's an ad exec and he is basically wanting to get a huge diamond account. And so in order to do that, he has to prove that somehow, this tracks logically, he can make any woman fall in love with him in 10 days. And if he does that, the account is his. And these two sexy women are kind of against him with his boss. And it's just this really interesting thing, but it's in the same time frame, which is where these hijinks kind of happen. And they're both scheming, but neither of the other person knows what's going to happen. And so, mixed messages, cringeworthy moments, that's kind of like the major setup of this film. But I'm curious, like as a kid, when did you guys watch this movie? What were your personal histories? What did you think about it? How did it impact you?
Man, was this middle school? High school?
Must have been. It was 2001. I think
2001. Oh, that's middle school then, right?
Yeah, middle school.
I remember I wanted to be Andy. So undergrad, I studied communications and film studies.
Same, film and media studies.
Hey, what's up, girl? But when I first got to college, I wanted to work in magazines. Like, I thought I wanted to go more the journalism route. I was the arts and entertainment section editor of my high school newspaper.
Ah, cool.
Alert. I knew I didn't want to work in newspapers, and magazines just seemed cooler. So I remember, like, my freshman year, I was very dead set on going the journalism route. Like, I used to get an obscene amount of magazine subscriptions, like, to my dorm room. Men's and women's, Details, GQ, Marie Claire, like
to your dorm room. I feel like that's
dorm.
A fucking sick ass move. That's like I'm an adult here. I'm getting magazine subscriptions.
My magazines. I was just obsessed. I was reading all these different magazines, like cover to cover, and so I remember watching the movie and. Like, I wanted to be Andy. I was like, I want that job. And I want to work at a cool magazine, but I also want to write about, like, real things, you know? So I really resonated with her. I really did.
So did she. She's like, I want to write about politics. Yeah. And Lana, her boss, is like, shoes. You can write about anything you want that has to do with shoes, fashion, you know, classic.
Exactly. Classics. That's my relationship.
Love it. What about you, Justine?
Yeah. For absolutely no reason at all, Kate Hudson is one of my favorite white women in Hollywood.
Yes,
I
mine
have
too.
no idea why.
I love it for no reason. The qualifier for no reason whatsoever.
No reason.
I also love her mother, Goldie Hawn.
Oh, yes, Goldie.
She's
Sweetie.
So she's like a little baby version of her mom, which I just love.
Totally.
But like messy, right? She got 3 baby daddies. She's always meeting somebody at a festival. She's like, she's just messy. I like her. She always dresses like
doing her
phenomenal. Thing. Yeah, she's always just like doing her. She's like wellnessy, but not too pushy about it. I just like her. So I really like Kate Hudson. And then the movie, I don't think I watched it in middle school, but that dress, that Carolina Herrera.
Oh my God.
The
yellow dress.
Oh my God.
With the Harry Winston diamond.
I just got chills. And her little tiny nips are just poking out.
Poking all through.
Oh my God, it's so fashionable. I can't stand it. I just can't stand it.
It was one of those like moments, right?
Yes,
one of those moments in fashion. And I was really interested in fashion up until probably like college. I was just loved the fashion industry. And so that was along with, I would say, like the J-Lo Grammys dress. Like it was up there as far as cultural moments goes and cultural competency. A lot of prom dresses were birthed out of that dress.
Every bitch for like 3 years after this was wearing this fucking dress to prom.
I am her.
And I even looked it up to prepare for this episode, and there are still articles about dupes for that dress because that's how iconic not only the dress was, but Kate wearing the dress was. Kate having no shapewear under the dress was iconic.
Oh my God. Okay, well that's really what I was gonna say is like the main thing I remember as a kid is just how skinny she is. Like truly, like how clear it was that like she's the funny girl. She's eating a big bite of this hamburger while she's like crossing her eyes. Like she's goofy, she's relatable, but she is this thin, right? She is stick skinny. Like, and someone who's always had my like straight sized curvy body. Like I've always been like, oh wow, she's the it girl. Like she's who I should be aspiring to look like. That's one piece of it. Another piece is genuinely how much chemistry I feel like Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey have as actors in this movie. It is palpable. Like I remember how intimate and romantic the scene felt in his childhood bathroom when they go to Staten Island. I'm just like, oh, like this music with like her really falling for him felt like they actually had serious chemistry. They're very good actors. I don't know if they did in real life, but those are kind of the main things that I remember, right? And I think like this movie is probably one of the most successful rom-coms of all time. Like, you know, still people were still talking about it years later. It had this cultural impact. But why are we talking about this today, right? Like, I think that it's a rom-com that really does kind of give us these like playful but twisted messages about like love, manipulation, honesty, how long it takes to fall in love. Like ironic actually that I was on your podcast talking about Love is Blind because that happens in the same time frame, like 10 days of like them falling in love in these pods, right?
Yeah.
And so I would love to unpack these like problematic elements and see what this film really teaches us about romance, what it gets right, what it gets very, very wrong. And so they're kind of like these buckets that I want to throw out there, and we can kind of take this conversation wherever we will, right? So there's like manipulation tactics as humor. Like both of them are lying to each other this entire time. This huge idea that women's needs when they're dating are like crazy, or like how to lose a guy is like by being needy or like emotionally in need. There's also kind of like this insane pressure on Andy to write this like sensational story rather than like highlighting her. She has a master's from Columbia, right? Like us, right? So it's kind of like, okay, what is going on here? Why is there so much emphasis on like her, you know, whatever, like that's kind of part of it. She's not pursuing her passion. And then finally, there's this kind of like portrayal of this like toxic relationship behaviors as romantic and charming. How he's kind of like, you know, oh, like despite all of these things, I'm going to invite you to the basketball game and I'm going to do all these things, right? So there's a lot here. So I'm wondering like what, any first reactions, any feelings on these, like what first comes up?
Yeah, I think the movie. So first, I'll say I think Matthew McConaughey was like perfectly cast.
Yes,
because I do believe he can make most women probably fall in love with him in 10 days.
Sincerely,
maybe even less. Maybe less than 10 days. He's just so charming in this movie, as you said. Their chemistry is so
on point.
Just like on point, very electric. And I think what was problematic for me is because he's such a hot commodity in Hollywood on screen. They set him up to look like this womanizer, right? He's playing with women, you know, to see if they could fall in love. But through all of those lies and manipulation that he's wielding, you never really are turned off from him.
Right.
Because he's so hot and charming. Meanwhile, Andy's set up to just look like a crazy idiot. Like and like all women are crazy. Yeah. There's no like redeeming side. For him, he can kind of like do whatever, and you're like, oh, but he's so hot, that accent. But then with her, you're like, girl, you just look crazy. Oh my god. So the imbalance was what was annoying for me.
She makes the book and she's like, oh, this is what our kids would look like. And she's like, I already called your mom. Like she's being psychotic, right? And this is exactly what you're talking about of like, this is the downside to her. But you're right. We don't really see any downside to him. Justine, what do you think about this or other things that I brought up?
One thing that I noticed throughout the film is how they didn't have sex the whole time, most of the time. And I feel like a lot of the messaging during that time in the media was that women have sex, get emotionally attached, and act like complete psychopaths. I heard that a lot growing up. And I heard a lot that it was via like a chemical that goes off in our brain. I heard it as if it was scientific fact quite often. And when we have you on our show, back on our show again, I hope for Sex and the City, I hope to dive into this a little bit more because that's a huge narrative that goes throughout Sex and the City, that women cannot have sex without being incredibly emotionally attached to a person. And the fact that they didn't have sex until after she did all of these really emotional things with him. And then also just beauty-wise, because I'm also very interested in beauty, very interested in this film. There was not a lash to be seen. It was just fascinating to me. But after they had sex, her hair got curly and natural because she felt free with him. Like
it's true,
right? And it does look very beautiful. I remember again, her nips are always pointing out. Like she's wearing this white tank top,
rock hard.
She's like really cutie. She's never wearing a bra, and then her hair is just like flowing and curling. You're like, this woman, has had sex. Like she is unleashed. She is, she has orgasmed. Is really what it feels like. Really good point. Yeah, about how they change her appearance afterwards.
And then also really quickly, the vibe, the evil stepsister Cinderella vibe between the two girls who work at Benjamin Button. What's his name? Benjamin.
Barry.
Barry.
Close. Almost got it.
Whatever his name is.
Okay. Yeah, Benjamin Barry.
At Matthew McConaughey's firm, they feel very evil stepsistery to Kate Hudson.
And
which I found fascinating.
We got to talk about their kind of sexiness for a second. Because I do think that they, like the evil stepsister thing. And they're like seducing their boss. Like they're, you know what I mean? There's like a moment where she's like touching her.
Oh, yes, that's
like
right.
little shirt, and he's
yes.
looking down her shirt, and you're just kind of like, okay, this is another bucket, right? Of just kind of this idea that those women in this story are used as like the sexy, smart people, but they can't be perceived as smart without the sexy. Like there's no kind of ability for them to get this account without them also seducing their boss. Like, and that doesn't make any sense. However, I do want to give the film credit to the friend group that exists in like Andy's friends, because even though Catherine Hahn, amazing actress, is portrayed as this like crazy ex-girlfriend who we find out later in the film like is so sad over her boyfriend, but they only dated for like a week, right? Yeah. So it's the same kind of idea though, that like women are crazy after they're dating and after they get broken up with. But I do think that like their friendship is something that I clocked, I feel like, when I was young, and it felt very genuine and like a fun friend group.
Yeah, definitely. I thought they were going to be onto something with the two women from his office, because when we first meet the black woman, she kind of like ethers him in the scene. And then the next time we see her at dinner with the client, she ethers him again. He's going on and on about how he knows women, whatever, and she just kind of like lets him have it. Like, you don't understand women, actually. So I was like, okay, I love this.
Right.
But I wish they just left it there. Like there's these two beautiful, smart ass like antagonists to him in the office. I thought it was so unnecessary when they had the girl kind of like have the client look down her shirt and kind of bring in the sex appeal. I was like, couldn't they just get the pitch without all of this? I feel like they could have done that. It was just like an unnecessary added moment.
Could they though? Back then in New York City in a big advertising firm, could they do it with that? This is way before everything we know now. 20 years.
Really good question.
I feel like they could.
Yeah. Like, it does kind of feel.
I would like to think they could. I don't want to say all women back then were getting pitches because they were leaning into their sex. I mean,
let's think really quickly about the meeting that Andy at Composure, that like her boss and all of them have, right? Like, there's not really any sexiness there, and it's kind of like there's this one character who kind of annoys everyone because of how she's talking, and so it's more of like she's like an annoying woman kind of portrayal.
She's like upbeat, like super positive.
Yeah, that's what she says. She's like, but also upbeat. Like over and over again. Yeah. And I don't know, that like that it feels more dynamic. To your point, Natasha, I do feel like it does feel kind of more dynamic than like other angles of similar kinds of movies do. Like, we do see different portrayals of the way that people are getting pitches and getting work and things like that. We have to transition though to this whole moment where the scene where they're doing the boys' poker night and she's just like losing it basically. Like she basically is like, I made you boys food. Here's this ugly ass dog who's going to piss on the table. Here's a tissue. Benny boo boo, blow. You need to blow your nose. Like the chat with the mom. Like there's just so much going on here. Yeah. What do you feel like? How do you feel like this scene is contributing to this idea of like women are crazy once they like start dating someone, or they're needy, or they get psychotic?
Welcome to Two Black Girls, One Rose,
a podcast discovering what we can learn about modern dating, love, and relationships from popular television. I'm Natasha.
And I'm Justine.
We're best friends and TV fanatics, and every week on our podcast, we're recapping all of your faves, from reality shows like Love is Blind and The Bachelor to classics like Sex and the City.
Each week, we recap the latest episode while discussing topics like, is friendship or passion a better foundation for a relationship? And should we be dating men in their 20s?
We both spent our 20s dating all around New York City, so we've got a lot of relatable mess and stories to share.
Listen to us on all podcast platforms, and for bonus and video content, join us on Patreon. The idea that someone as nurturing as Kate Hudson was portrayed to be in that scene was reflected upon the audience as needy is so fascinating to me. Because she was being everything that she did in that scene, most of the things she did in that scene were very motherly. She asked to blow his nose. She replaced the pizza with vegetables. She said that the plant was dead. She was
Fern.
love Fern.
I love that moment.
It's very like nurturing and motherly, and I think that being portrayed as like a needy, I always say stage 5 clinger, reference to the other fabulous rom-com, The Wedding Planner, or The Wedding Crashers. But I think, having that be known as clingy or needy is so fascinating to me, because at the end of the day, that's what a lot of men actually want behind closed doors. They don't want it in front of their friends.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. It was the in front of the friends that was killing it. And it seemed, I think it comes off as needy because she seems to have no boundaries, right?
Right.
It's the middle of poker night and here she is trying to blow his nose. Right. I think that's the part where she looks crazy. But take the guys out of the room. I feel like most guys want this like nurturing, like woman who's like, you know, making sure he's well fed and he's feeling good and take care of him. So yeah, I also thought Kate Hudson was also like perfectly cast for this role because she's so cute. She's like the perfect combination of what guys say cute and sexy. They're all looking for like a cute and sexy woman.
Like from Crazy Stupid Love. Have you seen that movie?
Yes. Yeah. I think she is that. She has that sex appeal, but then she's like so cute that even the guys were like, all right, let me put out my cigar. Like, cause she's so like endearing in that way.
She goes,
yeah.
She just wants to
her little facial expressions. Yeah, it's adorable.
Yeah, I just think it's like the premise itself, right? Like, how do you lose a guy in 10 days? You lose him by being too overwhelming in being nice is kind of the thing. And then I feel like if the shoe were on the other foot, where it was how to lose a girl in 10 days and how to make a guy fall in love with you, it would just be, it would not work, I think, because we're so used to this dynamic of like men ghosting and men not being able to talk about their emotions, that it would be like such a simpler movie. But I do think because the roles are reversed and like, he's trying to make her fall in love with him. It does feel like that's where the comedy comes in of like, no matter what she does, however crazy, quote unquote, she acts, no matter like she has this ugly ass dog that he's now taking care of. She names his penis Princess Sophia. Like there are all of these things that she does where like any man by, you know, our stretch of the imagination couldn't imagine being with a girl like that, which is insane because she's super hot. So like, right. Like you would still be with her, right? But I do find it very funny that like he's the one that needs to kind of keep trying with her and like, you know, keep crawling back to try to win this bet to make her fall for him. Like, what do you think about that kind of dynamic and how that's set up?
Yeah, I love that moment too, where she's like, he comes crawling back after, I think, the poker night, and she's like, haven't you had enough?
Yes. She's like on the edge of tears, like, please stop making me do this. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah.
Which I kind of appreciated because I feel like the reverse is generally men putting us through so much, right? And we keep coming back. So that small moment was a little redeeming for me, where this guy, she's putting him through the ringer and he's like crawling back. And I'm like, see, you can go through it too.
Literally on his knees on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I think the same. I think it speaks to what Natasha mentioned earlier, where we just can't get enough of Matthew McConaughey. This is part of the reason why, because he's like crawling on his knees, and something that people bring up very often now in media is that yearning is missing. And that's what's been missing from rom-coms since like 2010. We haven't had a good one in a long time. And yearning is missing. And I think he was the perfect yearner for this movie.
Yes. And like, you know, kind of fast forwarding a little bit. Okay. So we've already talked about like all this toxic behavior. Clearly it's like in the name of a bet, right? Like she's trying to basically write this article, which is why she's doing all of these things. He is trying to get this account, which is why he's not letting her leave basically, and not breaking up with her. And then they have this moment where she goes to his childhood home, right? And like, how could she be crazy in front of his family? So they kind of set it up where like all of a sudden she is like super herself. And he kind of mentions this, right? He's like, you have a million personalities. I don't know who the fuck you are, basically. But at his family home, there's that like super sexy scene that I mentioned. And then they're like on the motorcycle, and we start to love him even more when we do the calculations, when he drops her off at the apartment and says like, go to this, you know, thing for my work with me. And by the way, after 10 days, here are some Knicks tickets. So like he's making it clear to her that he genuinely likes her, like, and making it clear to the writing is making clear to the audience that like, he's not going to bounce after 10 days. So that further makes us fall in love with him. Right.
Yeah. But it also sets him up for just automatic forgiveness, because through all of this, she's still a pawn in this whole game. But it's like even the confidence that he had of like, we'll get past it. Okay, day 13, we're going to the next game. Like she's going to get over it. And it's like, he can do no wrong. Like even as viewers, we like forget like, oh my God, he got her Knicks tickets for the finals. Like it's like, what? She's still a part of this web of lies that she didn't sign up for. So what?
Right. Yes, exactly. Totally. And then there's the scene at the end, right, where she goes to this party with him and then everything unravels. So she finds out that, you know, the two hot evil stepsisters set it up. So basically Kate Hudson's character, Andy, finds out that this was a bet the whole time. And the boss talks to her and determines that she's in love with him. So he won the bet. He's happy that she's in love with him because I think he's in love with her potentially under these pretenses that he's tricking her the whole time. And then they sing "You're So Vain" to each other. What do we think about this whole like mess of what Mrs. DeLauer is like, oh, this is beautiful. Like the fucking Diamond Queen is just like like clapping along. Like I love this scene. It's so excellent. Like what do you think about it? What are we learning from this?
Yeah, I think it's such a classic like rom-com. I think of this era, there's always like a singing moment or something, like big declaration of love. What I think of the scene, I feel like I think what I really like about this movie is it's kind of like a Shakespearean comedy. Right. I think I was trying to look up too, because some of these movies are based on like Shakespeare, but I don't think
like
this
10
one
Things
was.
I Hate About You.
10 Things I Hate About You. Yeah, Taming of the Shrew.
Yes.
But yeah, I love how it kind of unfolded. I don't even have anything to say about the problematicness. Just like this big epic moment where you learn that they're both a wager and a pawn in each other's like game, and they're both mad at each other, but they both have no legs to stand on either. I found it very entertaining.